So when we first got there, they weighed him. Of course, it was just a normal 2-month checkup. And he was 10 pounds and 6 ounces. At his 1-month appointment, he was 10 pounds, 1 ounce. So he had only gained 5 ounces. So that was the first red flag, or the first concern. And so once we'd gotten his weight and, he wasn't like trending upwards like you would expect him to, the doctor began listening to his chest. And still, it did not dawn on me that something was off or was wrong. I thought that was weird that he hadn't gained weight because, looking at him every day, he looked like he had gained weight. He had gotten longer, but that wasn't the case. So the doctor listened, and she spent a little bit extra time on his chest. She was listening for what she heard as retractions. So there was some type of abnormal breathing that she was hearing. And so from there, she gave us, put an order in for us to go get an x-ray. She said, I want you to go get an x-ray, but I also want you to go see a lactation consultant, because we were just thinking that maybe he just wasn't taking in the right amount of milk. So I guess the first thing that went through my mind is just questioning, what's wrong with my baby? What could it be? What could it be?
Yeah, so once Jennifer called me, the first thing that kind of went through my head was, it's probably nothing, right? So obviously doctors' job is to listen to things, to try to, be precautious about what's going on, and obviously you want to be safe and sorry. So yeah, let's go. I put it on order. We go get an x-ray, and just kind of see how things go from there.
We actually got the x-ray results back within 6 hours of taking it. The results came back through my chart, and as soon as I saw that we had received something, I went in really quickly, and it said enlarged heart and some other kind of larger words that I Googled just to try to make sense of everything.
I didn't really show too much emotion because no one was bring the baby in or anything like that, but it was definitely, you don't want to read those things about anyone, let alone your infant child.
So after we received the results from the x-ray, we actually didn't hear, that was on a Tuesday. We didn't hear back from a doctor until Thursday. And the next step was to get an echocardiogram, which is basically a full picture of Jaxsen's heart. It would provide a little bit more context around the enlarged picture that they were seeing on the x-ray. We went in for the echocardiogram, and they collected his weight again. And still at this time, I said, well, maybe something was wrong with the scales at the pediatrician's office. Most immediately, a cardiologist came in and said, okay, you're not going home. We're going to get an ambulance, and you're going to go to Children's. And he proceeded to explain what was wrong with Jaxsen. So it's a core rotation of the aortic valve is the medical term for it. And so his messaging at that point was, there'll be a surgery. Maybe it won't be emergency. Maybe we'll probably wait until Monday or Tuesday, and you'll be home within a week.
So in my mind, I was kind of relieved. they found it. They know what the issue is. And from speaking with the first doctor, like I said, he coded it, but it was just like it's not the most extreme surgery. It's pretty low key, more of a type of deal. So I was like, well, I was kind of feeling relieved, to be honest, at that point. Like, well, we got to the doctor in time. They know what it is. It's not standard, but it's a pretty common procedure for infants to go through. So I was feeling at that point in time like, okay, we're in a good spot. More like Jackson's in a good spot. We're with the right people.
So to get him ready, before he actually got onto the ambulance, or we got onto the ambulance, they immediately started a medication. So his heart function was really struggling. And so they wanted to basically, had mentioned that valve that closes up once you comes out. They gave him some medication to open that valve back up. So basically the expectation was that you give him this medication, it opens up, his blood can flow, his heart function will, naturally recover. So that was step one. And then, based off of how he reacted to that medication, that was really going to be an indicator to know how soon he needed surgery, if it needed to be an emergency surgery, or if it's something that could wait until Monday or Tuesday the following week. I still get anxiety, like if I go past the children's that we started at to take that ride to main campus. I think my anxiousness at this point was really selfishly, maybe just wanting him to get better so that we can go home. They have this camera, like while you're on the ambulance, because it was actually my first time being on an ambulance, and you can see, I could see Jaxsen, and he was just in his car seat and just like sleeping, and wasn't a great picture. Still no idea what was to come. Still completely clueless that things would end up as they have. When we got to children's, and it was my little 10-pound baby, and it was like 15 people just surrounding him. I said, this is very, very serious. It was a bit overwhelming. It's a little bitty baby and so many people. So many. At that point, he wasn't connected to like a lot of wires or anything. But it was a lot of people for such a little person.
But eventually he goes to sleep, and he has it's called a decent night of sleep. But on Saturday, that's when things kind of start to get alarming for me. So now from Dr. Hart, we know he needs a procedure for his heart.
Surgeons started coming in, doctors started coming in, white coats. It got a little hectic. And so one of the attending doctors in the ICU, she came and she said, your son is very, very, very sick. Like, okay. And her tone was quite different from Dr. Hart when we had, his initial kind of like pre-diagnosis. And I'm like, okay, well, fix it. Like, do something about it, right? And she came in and she was explaining how they were going to do surgery. He was going to be connected to a VAD, ventricular assist device. So basically something that supports his heart function coming out of the surgery. I still wasn't mentally all the way there to fully comprehend exactly what she was telling me, to be totally honest. And then it was two surgeons came in, and his main heart surgeon, he said, "I'll be honest with you, Jaxsen's heart function is so poor that we don't know if he's going to make it onto the respirator." He said his heart function was like 7 or 8%. So the first surgery that he had, the ultimate goal was to do something to improve his heart function. And so they went in, they connected him to an LVAD machine. Basically, it's an external device that helped to control his heart function. And because of that blockage that I had mentioned before, they also went in and they placed a stent to open it up and to make sure that it stays open so that blood could flow through. And that was the first surgery. This LVAD that he was connected to, it was intended to be a very temporary thing. In fact, blood with plastic, I mentioned those wires. Blood clots are like, there's a huge management aspect of blood. And so the max that they would want anyone on that type of machine is about 14 days, especially being that he was so young. And so, 2 days went past, no change in heart function. In fact, within like 2 days, because there was no change, they actually went back in and did another procedure to try to adjust the cannulas, thinking that maybe the placement was a little bit off. I call that the second surgery, actually, and still no change. We're on day 5, no change. Day 10, no change. Day 12, we started talking about what was the next step, which would lead us into the third surgery. They had to switch him over to a more longer-term support device called a Berlin heart. And along with that came discussions around Jaxsen needing a heart transplant. And so we scheduled the next surgery, which was the transition to the Berlin heart. And kind of in parallel, they started giving us all of the education around transplant and listing, started reaching out to our insurance, making sure that we were eligible, etc. And that became kind of the new outlook. Yeah, Jaxsen's transition to the Berlin heart was not an easy journey. It took some time for us to actually get to a point where on a regular basis he was doing well. So March 11th, they switched him. He was switched to the Berlin heart. And it was very, very, very rocky. All leading up into him actually having a stroke within like 14 days of transitioning him to this longer term support device. So the stroke was definitely the valley, I would say, and after that things just got better and better and better. We got through all of the dark days and we reached somewhat of a steady state path. They had started teaching him again how to feed, so he was going through all of his OT and PT therapies. He was doing very well from this point forward. getting stronger and stronger, and at this point in preparation for the transplant.
And I kind of, Frank, I gave him a little pep talk. I was either infant. I was like, hey, you make sure you come back to me. You come back to the family. We need you. You be strong, and you got this.
At 2 months, I still had a whole nother month left of maternity leave. So I didn't have to. A fortunate part of the situation was that work was the furthest thing from my mind as we initially onset on this journey, which was a good thing. I've come to learn to appreciate the journey behind all of it. Bryant and I had, once Jaxsen got to a steady state, every Friday we had date night. We would go out and we would do something before we had to go pick up Brent from school. So it was around Memorial Day weekend, and so we were in the hospital for Easter. So this was the second holiday that we were going to be in the hospital. So mentally, I had just prefaced myself all right, here's another holiday that we're going to be in the hospital. Maybe we'll make it home for the next one. And then at 10:34, I got a no caller ID call, and it was a doctor, Dr. Nandy from his transplant team. And they said that they had a heart available for Jaxsen. And gosh, the emotions behind it were incredible. So many different mixed emotions. And I think even before I called Brian to let him know, I ran to the chapel. I had this thing in my head where whenever we get this call, I'm the first thing I'm going to do is thank God. And then it's I was kind of stopped in my footsteps. I said, well, what happened to somebody else's baby? And so I prayed for that family before I even prayed for Jaxsen. And then you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, we get to go home soon and resume our normal life. And it's a range of emotions. And I soon, after I kind of got my footing together and I kind of came back to reality, I called Brian and I'm it's a heart. They have a heart. It was a good day for us. It was a good day for us. So another thing is that Jaxsen, he was strong. He was strong. He was healthy. He was ready. And so because he was ready, the doctors, his whole care team they were ready, and they said, it's time. It's time. Significant milestones, getting out of the ICU. We spent 100 days in the ICU. So that was a big step. I think it was about 6 days after the transplant, we were able to go to the step-down unit. So literally taking that walk from side, was it B to A or A to B? It was a big deal for us. I was extremely happy to take that. And then the next big thing was going home.
Look at that over there. What's that right there?
You had a surprise for you.
We had a surprise for you.
Biggest supporters, my mom. She was huge. She, when we first started, she was extremely instrumental and significant in me keeping my faith. She reminded me that Jaxsen is not mine, and that God loves Jaxsen way more than I could ever love Jaxsen. And that stuck with me because it kept things in perspective, and it helped me with the fact of relinquishing control. he's not mine, he's God. He's a child of God. And
I watch my daughter, and I preference, because Jennifer is my daughter, but I watched how she orchestrated the journey, how they planned to spend time with Jaxsen and spend time with Bryant. She was never left. She was never left out of the sequel. I couldn't have wanted more for all four of them. The way they handled things, it was amazing. I knew God had to be somewhere in there because it just ran so smooth and so orderly that you couldn't have done that in your own might. So God has graced us. God has graced us.
That helped me out pretty significantly. Every time I would talk to my dad, and he probably, was just unsure about everything as I was, but there was just this confidence in his voice, like, he's gonna be okay, your baby's gonna be okay. I believed him because he said it with so much certainty. Like I knew that would happen. We had a team of just prayer warriors, people just praying for our baby. I remember on the Berlin placement day, our first lady, she texted me like literally as we were walking down with Jaxsen, like, you are not alone. And from then I knew people was praying for Jaxsen. I knew it. Like, I felt it. Like earlier on, like Bryn's birthday is and on March 7th actually. And so that's literally around the time when we were in the thick of it. And Sia and Tamika Johnson, they took her out and got her ice cream for her birthday and got her presents. And I just didn't have the bandwidth to like do a whole lot with Bryn. So like everything is just so grateful. Just so grateful.
My brother, he was always there. It's funny, sometimes in a situation like this, there's not much you can do. He lives in the DC area, so it's like a 6-hour drive. So when I first tell him the situation is happening, he's like, do I need to come? Like, I need to drive? Like, it's nothing you could it's literally nothing you could do, man. Like, stay with you and your family. He had an infant at the time as well. It's like, no, you stay with your family. Just, this is what's going on with mine. And my pit crew, the Johnson, the Martins, the Checkwise, obviously always supporting our church family, our pastor, my father was texting every day, just kind of for a status, what's going on. This, like you said, it's just a multiple people who done things for us, co-workers. Like I said, I started a new position. I literally don't know these people that well, but they was just pouring love to me, doing whatever they could, putting pots together to give the family gift cards so we don't have to eat hospital food every day, and just really just going above and beyond to help out in a situation where obviously we're at the hands of God here, and just doing whatever they could to kind of fill in. Our church family from home, Open Door, reaching out. Jennifer pinned us on a prayer call, so they're reaching out to check on the family and things of that nature. And I also just have to give a huge shout out to Nationwide in general, Nationwide Children, the team there.
He looks well. He's developing well. It's just amazing. Like I love waking up to him, even if he does wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Like it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. When I was going through, when I say my valley after Jaxsen had his stroke, it was like over the course of 3 days. Like was trying to just put things in perspective and wheel some things back and get back grounded. And I got to Romans 14:8, and it was, if I live for the Lord. If I die for the Lord. But whether I live or die, I belong to God. And so that, bridging that together with my mom reminded me that Jaxsen is not mine, he's God. And literally I was in my dark moment, just opening up the Bible, flipped it open, like, oh, look, it's right there, right? So that's how God has worked throughout this journey for me. Like it's been direct, it's been in my face, it's been clear. That's how I know that this is an intentional journey for me.